Pass the cranberry sauce, my brother sneered, telling me it was the only thing I was qualified to handle. He didn't realize that the delivery driver outside was actually an assassin, or that I was the only person in the room with a weapon strapped to my thigh. In this hidden identity and family drama story, the crystal chandelier above the dining table cast a fractured, prismatic light over the Thanksgiving spread. It was a scene of aggressive opulence. The O'Connor family did nothing by halves, especially when it came to demonstrating how much better they were than the rest of the world. The turkey was heritage breed, the wine was vintage French, and the conversation was, as always, centered around money, status, and the crushing weight of expectations. I sat at the far end of the table, the designated kids' seat, despite being 29 years old. My hands were folded in my lap, resting near the concealed holster beneath the heavy fabric of my dress. My name is Nia O'Connor, and as far as my family knew, I held a boring, lowly office job with no real future. But they were going to find out very soon that nothing could be further than the truth. I kept my breathing shallow and rhythmic, a habit formed years of deep cover stress management, while the voices of my family washed over me like a tide of sewage. Tyler Campbell, my older brother, sat at the head of the table. Technically, our father should have been there, but father had passed 3 years ago, leaving the family empire, a sprawling real estate development firm, in Tyler's manicured hands. Tyler had taken to the role of patriarch with the grace of a sledgehammer. He was handsome in a generic, expensive way, wearing a suit that cost more than my supposed annual salary. "Nia, are you even listening?" Tyler asked, his voice dripping with that familiar mix of pity and disdain. I looked up, blinking slowly behind my oversized glasses. "I'm sorry, Tyler, I was just admiring the centerpiece." Tyler sighed, looking around the cable at our other siblings and their spouses to ensure he had an audience. I was talking about the merger. The Campbell Group is acquiring the downtown sector. It's a $100 million deal. But I suppose that's over your head. How are things at what is it again? The Department of Motor Vehicles? It's the Department of Records, actually, I said softly. I'm a filing clerk. Right, Tyler laughed, taking a sip of his wine. Records. You file papers. You realize, Nia, that we offered you a position in marketing 5 times? You could have been a VP by now. Instead, you choose to be a bureaucrat. It's embarrassing, frankly. Mom would be ashamed. The mention of our mother made the table go quiet for a moment, but Tyler didn't care about the emotional impact. He only cared about the optics. To him, I was the broken rung on the ladder of success. I was the anomaly in a genetic line of winners. Beside me, Uncle Terrence Bennett cleared his throat. Terrence was the only one in the family who didn't look at me like I was a stain on the carpet. He was an old-school academic, a history professor who wore tweed and smelled of pipe tobacco. He reached out and patted my hand gently. "I think there is dignity in all public service," Terrence said, his voice gravelly and warm. "Nia keeps the wheels of the government turning. It's honest work." Tyler rolled his eyes. "It's invisible work, Terrence, and in this world, if you aren't seen, you don't matter. Look at her, she wears beige because she wants to disappear." I didn't say anything. I couldn't tell them that the beige dress was made of a Kevlar weave synthetic blend, or that the filing clerk job was a cover for my role as a section chief in the Defense Intelligence Agency. I couldn't explain that the reason I had missed Christmas last year wasn't because I was sick with the flu, but because I was negotiating a hostage release in a bunker in Estonia. They saw a mouse. They didn't see the viper coiled in the grass. I focused on my plate, cutting a piece of turkey with surgical precision. My peripheral vision, however, was scanning the room. I had been on edge since I arrived. There was a black van parked 3 houses down that didn't belong to the neighborhood watch. The catering staff was new. I didn't recognize the head waiter, and his gait was too heavy, too balanced. He walked like a man used to carrying weight on his hips. Tyler continued his monologue. "I'm just saying, Nia, you're nearly 30, no husband, no career prospects, driving a 10-year-old sedan. It's pathetic. I'm thinking of cutting your trust fund allowance completely. Maybe if you actually have to struggle, you'll develop some ambition." "That's enough, Tyler," Terrence said, his voice sharpening. "No, it's not enough," Tyler snapped, slamming his hand on the table. The silverware jumped. "I am the head of this family now. I am responsible for our legacy, and she is dragging us down. I have senators coming to my wedding next spring. How do I explain my sister, the secretary?" I took a sip of water, my eyes darting to the window behind Tyler. The reflection showed the front lawn. The delivery van I had noticed earlier was moving. It was rolling slowly toward the driveway, lights off. "Tyler," I said, keeping my voice low, "is there a delivery expected tonight?" He frowned at me. "What? No, why are you changing the subject?" "Because there is a van pulling up to the front gate, and the driver is wearing a tactical headset," I said calmly. Tyler turned in his chair, scoffing. "Don't be ridiculous. It's probably a DoorDash for the neighbors. You're paranoid." I looked at the waiter standing by the kitchen door. He was tapping his earpiece. "Get down," I whispered. "What?" Tyler asked loudly. Whatever happened next happened in slow motion for me, but in terrified, chaotic real time for everyone else. The front door didn't open, it exploded inward. Not with a fiery blast, but with the distinct, deafening crunch of a battering ram.
If you are enjoying this story, please like and subscribe. Also, please comment, as your feedback helps to improve the stories coming.
The sound echoed through the high ceilings of the O'Connor mansion like a thunderclap. Screams erupted from my sisters-in-law. Chairs scraped violently against the hardwood as people scrambled backward. Tyler stood up, his face a mask of confusion and outrage rather than fear. "Hey," he shouted, cuffing out his chest. "Who the hell do you think you are? This is private property." 6 men poured into the dining room. They were not police. They were not robbers. They were professionals. They wore black tactical gear, void of any insignia, with balaclavas covering their faces. They carried suppressed submachine guns, holding them with practiced ease. These were mercenaries. The lead intruder, a towering man with cold blue eyes visible through the slit in his mask, stepped forward. He didn't yell. He didn't ask for jewelry. He simply raised his weapon and pointed it directly at Tyler's chest. "Sit down," the man commanded. His voice was accented, Eastern European, perhaps Serbian. Tyler, for the first time in his life, looked small. He collapsed back into his chair, his hands trembling. "Everyone, phones on the table. Now," the leader barked. My family obeyed instantly. iPhones and Androids clattered onto the mahogany. I placed my burner phone on the table, a cheap flip phone I used for my civilian life. My actual comms device was disguised as the pearl earring in my left ear. Terrence was shaking. He looked at me, his eyes wide with terror. I gave him the slightest nod, a microscopic gesture meant to convey, "Wait." The leader walked around the table, looking at each of us. He stopped behind Tyler. "Which one is O'Connor?" the man asked. "I am," Tyler stammered. "I'm Tyler Campbell O'Connor. I have money in the safe. There's a wall safe in the study. Take it. Take whatever you want." The man laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. "We are not here for your paper, little man. We are here for the access key." Tyler blinked. The what?" "Do not play stupid," the man said, pressing the muzzle of the gun against Tyler's expensive suit jacket. "The encrypted ledger, the one your firm acquired when you bought the logistics hub at the port. You have the master drive. Where is it?" Tyler was weeping now. "I don't know what you're talking about. We buy real estate. We don't have ledgers. Please, just take the watches." I analyzed the situation. The logistics hub. Tyler had purchased a defunct shipping company last month to bulldoze their warehouse for condos. He didn't know that the shipping company was a front for a black market arms dealer network. The ledger they wanted contained the identities of every deep cover operative in the hemisphere. If they got it, thousands would die, including my team. The leader racked the slide of his weapon. "If you do not give me the drive in 10 seconds, I will start shooting your family. I will start with the old man." He pointed the gun at Terrence. "No!" Tyler screamed. "Don't shoot me! Shoot her!" Tyler pointed a shaking finger at me. "She's nobody!" Tyler yelled, his voice cracking with cowardice. "She's just a receptionist. She doesn't matter. If you need a hostage, take her. Just leave me alone."
The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush bones. My siblings looked at Tyler in horror. Terrence looked like he had been slapped, but Tyler just stared at the gunman, his survival instinct stripping away every layer of his humanity, revealing the rot underneath. The gunman turned his cold eyes toward me. He looked me up and down, seeing the beige dress, the glasses, the slump of my shoulders. He sneered. "Her? She looks like she would faint if I sneezed. No, I want the drive." He turned back to Terrence, leveling the gun at my uncle's head. 5 seconds. I exhaled. The time for hiding was over. I reached up to my left ear. I tapped the pearl earring twice. A tiny, high-frequency chirp sounded, inaudible to everyone but me, confirming the channel was open. "Alpha 7 actual to control," I said. My voice was no longer the soft, deferential murmur of Nia, the receptionist. It was steel. It was command. The gunman froze. He spun around to face me. "What did you say?" he hissed. I stood up. I didn't rush. I unfolded myself from the chair with a fluid grace that shed the clumsy sister persona like a dead skin. I took off my glasses and tossed them onto the table. They clattered next to the cranberry sauce. "I said I'm calling in the cavalry," I replied, my voice projecting clearly through the room. "Status code red," I spoke into the air, my eyes locking onto the leaders. "Location confirmed. Hostile force 6 count. Heavy arms. Level 4 extraction required immediately. Authorization O'Connor Zulu 19er. The gunman's eyes widened. He recognized the cadence. He recognized the authority. "Kill her!" he screamed to his men, but they were too slow, and I was not a receptionist. As the nearest mercenary raised his rifle, I kicked the heavy oak chair out from under the table. It slammed into his knees, sending him stumbling. In the same motion, I hitched my dress up, ripping the Velcro strap of the thigh holster. My hand found the grip of my Sig Sauer P320. I didn't fire. I didn't need to turn Thanksgiving into a bloodbath. I needed to control the space until the asset arrived. "Drop it," I bellowed, stepping in front of Terrence. The gunman hesitated. He saw the way I held the weapon. Two-handed, isosceles stance, finger indexed until the target was acquired. He saw the lack of fear. He realized too late that he had walked into a lion's den thinking it was a petting zoo. "Who are you?" he whispered. "I am the person who is going to ruin your night," I said. Suddenly, the room was bathed in blinding red light. Laser sights, dozens of them. They poured through the windows, dancing across the chests of the mercenaries. The sound of a helicopter thrumming directly above the house shook the wine glasses off the table. "Secure the room," a voice boomed from outside, amplified by a megaphone. The windows shattered inwards simultaneously, not from bullets, but from flashbang grenades that detonated with blinding brilliance.
My family screamed and hit the floor. I didn't flinch. I had closed my eyes and covered my ears at the exact calculated moment of entry. When the light cleared, the dining room was full of ghosts. 12 operators from the Special Weapons and Tactics Division of the DIA stood in the room. They were giants, armored in full battle rattle, night vision goggles flipped up. They moved with a speed that made the mercenaries look like amateurs. Within seconds, the 6 intruders were on the ground, zip-tied and gagged. The threat was neutralized without a single shot fired by the enemy. The room fell silent, save for the sobbing of my sister-in-law under the table. Then the front doors opened again. This time, a man in a sharp gray suit walked in. He was flanked by 2 armed guards. He had silver hair and the demeanor of a man who could order an airstrike while ordering coffee. This was Lopez, Director of Clandestine Operations, my boss. He stepped over the broken glass, ignoring the sobbing O'Connors, ignoring the tied-up mercenaries. He walked straight to me. The room watched, paralyzed. Tyler pulled himself up from the floor, his face pale as a sheet. Who are you?" Tyler stammered at Lopez. "I'm calling the police. You can't just—" Lopez didn't even look at him. He stopped 3 feet in front of me. He snapped his heels together and offered a sharp, respectful bow of his head. "Section Chief O'Connor," Lopez said, his voice respectful. "Director," I acknowledged, holstering my weapon. "We received the distress signal," Lopez said. "Extraction Team Alpha was in the vicinity. We secured the perimeter. The threat is contained. Are you injured, ma'am?" "I am secure, Lopez. Thank you for the rapid response." Tyler's mouth was hanging open. He looked from Lopez to me, his brain trying to process the impossibility of the moment. "Section Chief?" Tyler whispered. "Nia?" I turned to face my family. They were huddled together, looking at me as if I were a stranger. And in a way, I was. The Nia they knew, the doormat, the failure, the disappointment, was gone. I looked at the mercenary leader, who was being hauled to his feet by 2 SWAT officers. "Secure him in the transport," I ordered Lopez. "He's looking for the Antwerp ledger. That means there's a leak in the Belgrade station. I want him interrogated tonight. I want names by morning." "Understood, Chief," Lopez said. "And the civilians?" He gestured to my family. I looked at them. I looked at Terrence, who was smiling proudly through his shock. I looked at my sisters, who looked terrified. And I looked at Tyler. Tyler, who had offered me up as a sacrifice to save his own skin. "Process them," I said coldly. "Non-disclosure agreements, level 5 clearance wiping. If they talk about this, they go to federal prison." "Wait!" Tyler shouted, stepping forward. "Nia, you can't do this. I'm your brother. What is going on? You're a receptionist." I stepped closer to him. The tactical team shifted, ready to drop him, but I held up a hand. "I haven't been a receptionist since I was 22, Tyler," I said, my voice calm but icy. "While you were buying condos and judging my shoes, I was running counter-terrorism operations across 3 continents. While you were bragging about your tax bracket, I was ensuring that people like you could sleep at night without being blown up." Tyler stammered, his arrogance crumbling into dust. But why didn't you say anything?" "Because," I said, leaning in close, "in my world, silence is survival. And in your world, silence is impossible. You would have bragged about it. You would have gotten me killed." I turned back to Lopez. "Get them out of here. I need to debrief." Lopez nodded. "Move out," he barked. The SWAT team began to usher my family out of the room toward a secure holding area for processing. Tyler tried to resist. "This is my house. You can't arrest me. I'm Tyler Campbell." Lopez stopped and looked at Tyler with utter contempt. "Mr. Campbell," he said smoothly, "you just tried to trade a high-ranking federal officer to a terrorist to save your own life. You are lucky that Section Chief O'Connor is merciful. If it were up to me, you would be in a black site in Nevada for the next 40 years. Tyler went pale. He looked at me one last time, his eyes pleading. "Nia." I didn't answer. I turned my back on him and picked up the cranberry sauce from the table. "Take him away," I said. As the room cleared, leaving only me, Lopez, and Terrence, the silence returned. Terrence stood up, brushing glass off his tweed jacket. He walked over to me. "I always knew there was more to you, kid," he said softly. I smiled, the adrenaline finally starting to fade, leaving a heavy exhaustion in its wake. "How did you know, Uncle?" Terrence chuckled. "You never flinched, not once. In 20 years of Tyler's bullying, you never blinked. Only a person who has seen real monsters can be that patient with a fake one." I hugged him. It was the first real, honest contact I'd had with my family in a decade. "Go with Lopez, Uncle Terrence. He'll make sure you get home safe." I watched them leave. I stood alone in the ruins of the dining room. The turkey was cold. The wine was spilled. The illusion of the perfect O'Connor family was shattered forever. I reached for my earpiece. "O'Connor to control. Site is secure. Requesting extraction." "Copy that, O'Connor. Bird is inbound. ETA 2 minutes. I walked out the front door, stepping over the splintered wood. I didn't look back at the mansion. I didn't look back at the life I had pretended to live. The helicopter landed on the front lawn, flattening Tyler's prized rose bushes. I climbed aboard, the engine roaring, lifting me up and away from the failure they thought I was, and back into the shadow war where I reigned as a queen. The debriefing took 3 days. The incident at the O'Connor estate was scrubbed from local police logs. The neighbors were told it was a gas leak scare combined with a SWAT raid on a fugitive hiding in the area. The delivery van disappeared into the bowels of federal evidence. I spent those 3 days at Langley, managing the fallout. The Antwerp ledger was secured. The leak in Belgrade was plugged. The mercenary cell was dismantled. It was a good week for the agency. It was a strange week for me. On the 4th day, I sat in my office. It wasn't a cubicle. It was a corner office with bulletproof glass overlooking the Virginia tree line. My nameplate on the desk read, Nia O'Connor, Deputy Director of Strategy. Lopez knocked on the doorframe. Ma'am? Your family has been processed. NDAs are signed. They are currently in a holding room at the annex. They are requesting to see you. All of them? I asked, not looking up from my tablet. Your brother is vocal. The others are mostly just confused. Your uncle is asking for tea. I sighed. Bring them in. But not here. Use conference room B. I don't want them in the secure zone. 10 minutes later, I walked into conference room B. It was a stark, gray room with a metal table. My siblings, Sarah, David, and Tyler, sat on one side. Terrence sat at the end. When I entered, the atmosphere shifted. Sarah and David stood up instinctively, looking at me with wide, fearful eyes. Tyler stayed seated, his arms crossed, his jaw set in a stubborn line. I was wearing my uniform now. Not a military uniform, but the sharp, tailored suit of an intelligence executive. I wore my ID badge openly. I carried myself differently. Please, sit, I said, taking the chair at the head of the table. Sarah spoke first. Her voice was trembling. Nia, they said you run a spy ring? I chuckled dryly. Not exactly a ring, Sarah. I work for the Defense Intelligence Agency. But the receptionist job, the beige clothes? David asked. Camouflage, I said. It's easier to operate when no one expects anything from you. And you made it very easy, David. You all did. You were so eager to believe I was a failure, you never looked twice. Tyler scoffed. So what? You lied to us for 10 years? You made us think you were pathetic just to, what, laugh at us? I didn't do it for you, Tyler, I said, my voice hardening. I did it because my job requires anonymity, and frankly, your egos were the perfect cover. No one looks at the disappointment of the O'Connor family and thinks, national security asset. Tyler slammed his hand on the table, trying to regain some semblance of his old dominance. You humiliated me, in my own house. You let those men put a gun to my head. I leaned forward. I saved your life, Tyler, and let's be very clear about what happened that night. When the gun was pointed at you, you pointed it at me. You offered me up to die. The room went silent. Sarah and David looked at Tyler. They had been too terrified in the moment to fully process his betrayal. But now, in the cold light of the debriefing room, the reality of it sank in. You did what? Sarah whispered, looking at her brother. I panicked, Tyler stammered. I didn't mean it. I thought they wouldn't hurt her. He said, take her. She's a nobody, I recited. Those were your words, Tyler. Tyler looked down, his face flushing red. I stood up. I have authorized your release. You have all signed the Official Secrets Act. If you speak of my job or the events of Thanksgiving to anyone, spouses, friends, therapists, you will be prosecuted for treason. Do you understand? Sarah and David nodded vigorously. Yes, Nia, we understand. And one more thing, I said. I looked at Tyler. I am freezing the family trust. What? Tyler shot up. You can't do that. I manage the trust. Not anymore, I said calmly. As of this morning, the assets have been flagged for investigation regarding the purchase of the logistics hub. It's a matter of national security. Until I clear the funds, the O'Connor accounts are locked. Tyler looked like he was going to be sick. But the merger, the wedding. You'll have to find a way to manage, I said, echoing his words from years ago. Maybe if you actually have to struggle, you'll develop some character. I turned to Terrence. "Uncle, you are free to go. I have a car waiting to take you home." Terrence stood and walked over to me. He placed a hand on my shoulder. "I'm proud of you, Nia," he said, "not because of the badge, but because you didn't let them break you." "Thank you, Uncle." I walked to the door. "Nia," Sarah called out, Will we see you at Christmas?" I stopped, my hand on the door handle. I looked back at them, at the family that had defined me by my failures for my entire life. I saw the fear in their eyes, but also the newfound respect. And in Tyler's eyes, I saw the crushing realization that he was no longer the king. "I don't think so," I said. "I have work to do. And frankly, I prefer cranberry sauce from a can. It has less baggage." I walked out of the room, leaving the door open behind me. Lopez was waiting in the hallway. "Done, ma'am?" "Done, Lopez." We walked down the corridor, the rhythmic click of our heels echoing on the linoleum. "What are your orders, Chief?" Lopez asked. I checked my watch. The world was still turning. There were still threats in the dark. There were still things that needed to be protected. "Get the team ready," I said, a small smile playing on my lips. "We have a situation in Kyoto. And Lopez—" "Yes, ma'am." "Next year, let's order pizza for Thanksgiving." "Yes, ma'am." The elevator doors closed, sealing away Nia the receptionist forever, and carrying Section Chief O'Connor up to the roof, where the sky was wide, open, and limitless.